It's shocking how a rat became top dog of America's most feared biker gang. Meet Garnet Mother McEwen, the guy who lost a leg, opened a tattoo shop, and schemed his way to the presidency of the Outlaws MC. This Canadian snitch played both sides, feeding intel to cops while plotting to control the most violent biker organization in North America. His journey from pencil salesman to power-hungry president left a trail of betrayal, drugs, and broken brotherhood. The shocker: his fellow bikers beat him with his own fake leg when they finally caught on. The pencil salesman who became a biker boss. In the quiet Canadian town of Camplin, nobody could have predicted that a simple pencil salesman would evolve into one of the most dangerous figures in outlaw motorcycle history. Garnet Mother McEwen started like any ordinary guy, walking door to door with a briefcase full of No. 2 pencils. Hard to imagine this same man would one day command one of North America's most feared biker organizations. After his pencil-pushing days, McEwen moved to St. Catharines, Ontario, and got a job at BJ's Menswear selling mod clothing, about as far from the outlaw biker image as you could get. Everything changed when he opened a tattoo parlor that quickly became a hangout for leather-clad bikers from Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club. Little did these rough riders know they were being sized up by a man with dangerous ambitions. McEwen's nickname, Mother, might sound soft, but nothing about his rise to power was gentle or maternal. Life threw McEwen a major curveball when he lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. Most people would have hung up their riding days, but not McEwen. With a prosthetic leg strapped on and unwavering determination, he didn't just continue riding, he thrived. What could have been a career-ending injury instead became a tool for manipulation. McEwen used his disability to gain sympathy while calculating his next moves up the club hierarchy. His tattoo shop became the unofficial headquarters for Satan's Choice MC, and his natural charisma propelled him through the ranks. Before long, he was president of the St. Catharines chapter. What made McEwen dangerous wasn't just his ambition, it was his calculating nature. He saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. The film opens on a weathered storefront, bathed in early morning light, marking the humble origins of a young salesman peddling wooden pencils along the quiet streets of St. Catharines, Ontario. Armed with a silver-tipped display case, he honed soft sales pitches beneath flickering neon signs, dreaming of something greater. A sudden detour brought him to BJ's Menswear, where tailored suits and mod fashion whispered of rebellious youth. Saving every penny, he transformed a corner space into a tattoo parlor. Ink guns replaced pencil sharpeners, and walls once lined with graphite now bore vivid designs. Bikers drifted in, leather jackets heavy with promise. An accident on a narrow country road changed everything. A motorcycle slipped, and a prosthetic leg became his constant companion. Undeterred, he returned to the shop, the injured man now drawn to the roar of engines beyond inked flesh. Late nights found him leaning against glowing chrome, eyes reflecting exhaust flames. He found a new tribe in Satan's Choice Motorcycle Club. Leather replaced lace collars, and brotherhood eclipsed profit margins. He rose through the ranks with charisma, first president of the St. Catharines chapter, then interim national leader. Rare moments of strategy played out over gatherings in smoky backrooms. Ambition and betrayal intertwined. Allegiances shifted beneath murky neon in border bars. He brokered an uneasy alliance with an American club, dreaming of a full patchover. Police bugs and secret deals turned him into a double agent, power slipping away as the club fractured and chapters deserted. By the late 1970s, the biker boss who began with pencils faced exile. Stripped of colors and dignity, he disappeared into anonymity, his leather jacket replaced by a dishwasher's apron. Decades later, archival footage and tattoos testify to a life of audacity, ink, and the lure of the open road. In 1969, when National President Bernie Guindon was imprisoned for rape, McEwen stepped in as the obvious successor. While others viewed this as temporary power, McEwen saw it as destiny. He began eyeing something bigger, a connection with the American Outlaws MC. By 1974, when Guindon was released, he sent McEwen to Fort Lauderdale to meet with the Outlaws MC. These weren't your typical bikers. They were hardened Vietnam veterans looking to recapture the brotherhood and adrenaline they'd experienced in war. McEwen was immediately impressed and wanted in, but he faced resistance from Satan's Choice leadership, who weren't eager to surrender their Canadian identity to become part of an American club. This resistance didn't deter McEwen, it only fueled his determination. His vision wasn't just about riding motorcycles or dealing drugs. For McEwen, this was about power, influence, and creating the most formidable biker organization in North America. He understood that the Vietnam War had created a generation of battle-hardened men searching for purpose, and he saw the Outlaws as the perfect vehicle for his ambitions. The tattoo artist with one leg began weaving an intricate web of connections between Canadian and American bikers, carefully positioning himself at the center. He knew that to achieve his goals, he would need to remove obstacles, including those who had once trusted him. As we'll see next, McEwen was laying the groundwork for a betrayal that would shake the foundations of outlaw biker culture and transform him from a respected leader into something far more sinister. A dangerous double agent playing both sides of the law. Playing both sides, the perfect rat. By August 1975, Garnet Mother McEwen had grown tired of waiting for his chance to merge Satan's Choice with the American Outlaws. The path to power seemed blocked by Bernie Guindon, who still held considerable sway over the club despite his legal troubles. McEwen needed Guindon out of the way, and he found his opportunity by making a move that would forever brand him as a rat in the biker world. He became a police informant. His big chance came when he learned about a major PCP manufacturing operation at Ober Lake. This wasn't just any drug lab, it was run out of a hunting lodge owned by the Satan's Choice Oshawa chapter president. More importantly, Bernie Guindon was scheduled to visit. Without hesitation, McEwen tipped off the Ontario Provincial Police. When Guindon arrived expecting a warm welcome from his brothers, he instead found himself in handcuffs, caught with $6 million worth of PCP and manufacturing equipment. As Guindon headed back to prison, McEwen could barely contain his satisfaction. His main obstacle had been removed, and he slid easily into the role of interim national president. McEwen's double life had begun. To his brothers, he was a loyal leader fighting for the club's expansion. To law enforcement, he was a valuable informant, providing insider information on one of Canada's most notorious motorcycle clubs. This dangerous game required constant vigilance. One slip could mean a death sentence in the biker world where snitches are considered worse than murderers. As a police informant with ambitions of power, McEwen lived in a dangerous world of contradictions. He used his position to push for a common association patch with the American Outlaws while simultaneously feeding information to law enforcement. His leadership style became increasingly paranoid and dictatorial. He even went as far as bugging members' cars to monitor their conversations, looking for anyone who might suspect his betrayal. The club that had once been about brotherhood became McEwen's personal playground. He threatened to expel the Kitchener chapter for talking to journalists, created divisions between chapters, and ruled through intimidation. Members began to resent him, but few dared to challenge him directly. Those who knew or suspected he was an informant risked their lives if they spoke up. In secret meetings with the presidents of Windsor, Ottawa, and Montreal chapters, McEwen laid out his grand plan for a complete merger with the American Outlaws. Using manipulation and the implied threat of his police connections, he convinced two presidents immediately, while the Montreal president reluctantly agreed after pressure. McEwen orchestrated what amounted to a hostile takeover. In July 1977, he called a meeting of chapter presidents, conveniently excluding those loyal to Guindon. The location was telling: Crystal Beach, closer to the American border than their usual meeting spot at Wasaga Beach. He brought Detroit Outlaws members as muscle to ensure compliance. At this meeting, in a symbolic ceremony that marked the end of Satan's Choice as an independent club, the chapter presidents burned their old jackets and put on new ones bearing the Outlaws patch. McEwen had achieved his goal. He had delivered Canadian chapters to the American Outlaws. But his greatest challenge was yet to come: maintaining his cover while leading an organization that considered informants worthy of death. As we'll see next, his days at the top were numbered. as both his former brothers and the very organization he'd schemed to join would soon discover the depth of his betrayal. The king of betrayal faces payback. Success built on betrayal rarely lasts long. For Garnet Mother McEwen, the triumph of orchestrating the Satan's Choice patch over to the Outlaws quickly began to crumble as his web of lies unraveled around him. From the confines of Millhaven prison, Bernie Guindon wasn't taking his betrayal lying down. He placed a $10,000 bounty on McEwen's head, a serious threat in the world of outlaw bikers where such contracts are fulfilled with brutal efficiency. Not long after, McEwen's house in St. Catharines became the target of an assassination attempt. Though he survived, the message was crystal clear. His days were numbered. Meanwhile, the grand merger he'd schemed for was falling apart at the seams. Many Satan's Choice members, disgusted at the betrayal of their Canadian identity, simply walked away. Rather than creating a stronger, unified club, McEwen's manipulation had weakened both organizations. Chapters were left with fewer members, and morale hit rock bottom. Most bikers weren't fooled by McEwen's supposed dedication to the Brotherhood. They recognized his actions for what they were: selfish power grabs motivated by personal gain. As one former member put it, McEwen wasn't building a better club, he was building a better future for McEwen. The Toronto chapter of Satan's Choice proved particularly problematic for McEwen's ambitions. They flat out refused to join the Outlaws, and they weren't alone. They formed alliances with other local clubs, like the Paradise Riders and the Vagabonds, to block the Outlaws from gaining a foothold in Toronto. This standoff would continue for years after McEwen's reign ended. Despite the growing resistance, McEwen achieved his goal of becoming the first national president of the Canadian Outlaws. But leadership built on deception is like a house of cards. One gust of truth and the whole thing collapses. The American Outlaws, led by Taco Bowman, discovered McEwen had embezzled $30,000 from the club. For a man who had preached brotherhood and loyalty, this was the final straw. In most cases, stealing from an outlaw motorcycle club would result in a death sentence. McEwen was lucky; he was merely expelled from the organization he had worked so hard to join. His fall from grace was complete when he left town, abandoning his motorcycle and leather for a dishwasher's apron at a Calgary hotel. Cut to a smoky warehouse near the Detroit border. Torn jackets burn, chapters swear allegiance to fresh chrome skulls. His deal with the Outlaws blossoms into a hostile patchover. In June 1977, amid shattered brotherhood and whispered threats, delegates from Windsor to Montreal concede. The man who once tipped off his own president now stands at the helm of Canada's most feared outlaw club. His ascendancy is swift. Archival shots show him presiding over grim rallies, his gaze steely beneath the Outlaws' black and white banner. But cracks appear: missing dues, embezzled funds, cash funneled into personal coffers. American leaders discover the betrayal. A dyed leather jacket arrives, stamped expelled. Night falls on a lonely Calgary diner. The former national president, invader of loyalties, now washes dishes behind a scratched counter. A $10,000 bounty glitters on a hastily faxed memo. Shadows converge at his rented room. A brutal beating erupts. His own artificial limb becomes a weapon of his disgrace. In the final sequence, a deserted highway at dawn frames a single patch fluttering on a barbed wire fence. The perfect rat's emblem. The man who masterminded police raids and rebranded an entire motorcycle empire vanishes into obscurity. The last shot lingers on a cracked photo of him in full colors. Once king of betrayal, now forever hunted by the ghosts of his own ambition. But McEwen couldn't stay away from the biker lifestyle for long. In Calgary, he joined a smaller club called the Chosen Few MC. Yet his sticky fingers got him in trouble one final time when he was caught stealing from his new brothers. This time, there would be no mercy. His fellow bikers administered a brutal beating, using McEwen's own artificial leg as a weapon, a humiliating end for a man who once commanded respect and fear. The beating with his own prosthetic leg became legendary in biker circles, a symbolic punishment for a man who had used his disability to gain sympathy while manipulating everyone around him. McEwen's story serves as a stark reminder in the outlaw biker world. Loyalty to the Brotherhood comes above all else, and betrayal carries consequences that no amount of power or influence can prevent. As we'll see next, McEwen's legacy would continue to shape the Outlaws MC long after his disgraceful exit from the scene. A legacy written in betrayal. By the late 1980s, Garnet Mother McEwen had become a cautionary tale in outlaw biker circles, the ultimate example of what happens when ambition and self-interest trump brotherhood and loyalty. His downfall was celebrated by members of Satan's Choice, who saw his beating at the hands of the chosen few as poetic justice for his years of manipulation and betrayal. After the humiliating beating with his own prosthetic leg, McEwen finally accepted that his days in the outlaw biker world were over. He moved to Saskatoon with his family and lived a quiet, unremarkable life until his death in January 2012. The man who had once dreamed of leading the most powerful outlaw motorcycle organization in North America died in obscurity, his name mentioned only as a warning to those who might consider putting personal gain above club loyalty. But while McEwen's personal story ended in disgrace, the Outlaws MC continued to grow and evolve. Founded as the McCook Outlaws MC in 1935 by Electromotive Company employees at Matilda's Bar on Route 66 in the Chicago suburb of McCook, Illinois, the club had survived far worse than the betrayal of one man. Though inactive during World War II, the Outlaws had reformed afterward and attended the first major post-war motorcycle rally at Soldier Field in Chicago in May 1946. By the 1970s, the Outlaws had become one of the big four outlaw motorcycle clubs, alongside the Hells Angels, the Bandidos, and the Pagans. Their rivalry with the Hells Angels began on April 27, 1974, when 3 Hells Angels were executed by outlaw members in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, retaliation for a beating that had taken place months earlier in New York City. This conflict would result in hundreds of fatalities in each club over the following decades. Despite McEwen's disgraceful exit, his patchover of Satan's Choice chapters did establish the Outlaws as an international club. This expansion continued well beyond Canada, with chapters eventually opening in France, 1993, Australia, 1994, Norway, 1995, and even Japan, 2006. By the 2000s, the Outlaws had grown to 441 chapters in 43 countries across Asia, Europe, and North America. The club's insignia evolved over time, from a head-on view of a motorcycle in a winged circle to the now famous Charlie logo featuring a skull and crossed pistons. Their colors, black and white, became recognized worldwide, as did their motto, "God forgives, outlaws don't." GFOD. Law enforcement agencies worldwide consider the Outlaws to be involved in organized crime, drug trafficking, extortion, money laundering, prostitution, weapons trafficking, and violence directed at rival clubs. Members consistently deny these allegations, insisting they're simply motorcycle enthusiasts living a non-conventional lifestyle. McEwen's legacy within the organization is complex. While current members rarely speak his name, the systems he put in place, the territorial expansion, the hierarchical structure, the international connections, continue to define the Outlaws MC. In a strange way, his betrayal strengthened the club by showing exactly what kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated. The Outlaws learned from McEwen's betrayal and became more careful about who they allowed into positions of power. McEwen finally accepted his biker days were over. He moved to Saskatoon with his family and lived in quiet obscurity until his death in January 2012. The man who once commanded fear and respect, who dreamed of leading North America's most powerful motorcycle organization, died as an unknown, his name mentioned only as a warning in hushed conversations among club members. While McEwen's personal journey ended in disgrace, his impact on the Outlaws MC was profound and lasting. Despite his betrayal, his orchestration of the Satan's Choice patchover established the Outlaws as an international organization. This Canadian expansion became the template for their later growth into Europe, Australia, and Asia. By the 2000s, partly because of groundwork McEwen laid, the Outlaws had grown to over 400 chapters across 43 countries. Perhaps McEwen's most significant legacy was how his betrayal transformed outlaw motorcycle clubs' internal security. His double dealing as a police informant made clubs more paranoid and secretive, implementing stricter vetting processes for prospective members. After the McEwen incident, many clubs began requiring prospects to commit crimes in front of full members to prove they weren't law enforcement, a direct response to being burned by the one-legged snitch who would be king. The McEwen saga also affected how motorcycle clubs interact with law enforcement. His informant activities made clubs even more resistant to cooperation with authorities, strengthening the no-comment policy and increasing punishment for those suspected of talking to police. Today, in clubhouses across North America, the story of Garnet Mother McEwen continues to be told to new prospects as the ultimate example of what happens when personal ambition trumps brotherhood. Though his name is rarely spoken with anything but contempt, his legacy lives on in the very structure of the organization he both served and betrayed. Perhaps McEwen's most lasting impact was on the relationship between outlaw motorcycle clubs and law enforcement. His double-dealing made clubs even more secretive and suspicious of new members, implementing stricter vetting processes to prevent infiltration. This paranoia would shape how these organizations operated for decades to come, making them even harder for authorities to penetrate. Next, we'll explore how the Outlaws MC evolved before and after McEwen's influence, transforming from a small Chicago club into a global organization. The rise of a brotherhood, Outlaws before and after McEwen.
It must have been really intense being in Illinois, in the state where their mother is. Was there a lot of them? Like, you were heavily outnumbered?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in Southern Illinois, where I was at, they were the only club. So if you were in a club in Southern Illinois, you were in either their club or one of their support clubs. Until I started a Mongol chapter there.
And then you also opened up in Gary, right? In Indiana. Isn't that one of their strongholds too?
Yeah, but so when I did that St. Louis thing, they started to see that we can work together, essentially. Like, you know, we both didn't get along with the Angels, and as long as we were both really active, it was potentially keep the Angels away. And so they were losing ground in Gary from what they told me, and they were wanting us to maybe start a chapter there too to help them out. And so we did, because by chance, I had a member that lived there, and then we had a couple guys that were on the Chicago side, but we didn't have a Chicago chapter, so we called it Gary. And the relationship was good for a while. The regional boss had said he never gave me permission to open that chapter, but the local guys were the ones that asked. And so that
The Outlaws Motorcycle Club didn't begin with Garnet McEwen. Long before a one-legged tattoo artist from Canada schemed his way to power, the club had already established itself in American biker culture. Founded in 1935 by employees of the Electromotive Company at a bar called Matilda's on Route 66, in the Chicago suburb of McCook, Illinois, the Outlaws have one of the longest histories of any motorcycle club in America. During World War II, the club became inactive as members served in the military. When the war ended, returning veterans sought to recapture the brotherhood and adrenaline they'd experienced in combat. The Outlaws reformed and attended the first major post-war motorcycle rally at Soldier Field in Chicago in May 1946, a significant moment in biker culture history. By 1950, they had been renamed the Chicago Outlaws MC after relocating their headquarters to the south side of the city. The original Outlaws insignia was simple, a head-on view of a motorcycle in a winged circle, hand-painted onto the backs of members' jackets. In 1950, this changed to a small skull, and old-style letters were adopted. By 1954, crossed pistons were added to the skull design, influenced by the fictional Black Rebel Motorcycle Club from the film The Wild One. The skull and crossed pistons logo, affectionately known as Charlie, was redesigned again in 1959, making it larger and more detailed. In 1965, the various aligned clubs incorporated as the American Outlaws Association, AOA, formalizing their structure. This was a turning point that established the Outlaws as more than just a local riding club. They became an organization with chapters spread across multiple states. The AOA patch featured an outstretched middle finger in a rounded triangle, adopted as a parody of the American Motorcycle Association logo. By the time McEwen entered the picture in the mid-1970s, the Outlaws had become one of the big four outlaw motorcycle clubs, alongside the Hells Angels, the Bandidos, and the Pagans. Their long-standing rivalry with the Hells Angels had already begun, sparked by a violent incident in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on April 27, 1974. when 3 Hell's Angels were executed by outlaw members in retaliation for an earlier beating. What McEwen brought to the Outlaws was international expansion. Though his methods were controversial and ultimately led to his downfall, his patchover of Satan's Choice chapters established the Outlaws as a global organization. After McEwen's disgraceful exit, this international growth continued under more legitimate leadership, with chapters eventually opening across Europe, Australia, and even Japan. Today's Outlaws MC bears little resemblance to the small club founded by electromotive company employees. Modern chapters operate like businesses, with elected officer corps consisting of a president, vice president, treasurer, and sergeant-at-arms. These chapters follow guidelines that dictate election procedures, gatherings, and actions against members who violate club bylaws. Membership requirements have become stricter since McEwen's betrayal. Applicants must be white men over the age of 21 who own an American-made motorcycle of at least 750 cubic centimeters, typically Harley-Davidson, Indian, or Victory. Prospective members go through a rigorous process, from hang-around to prospect to probate, before becoming full-patched members. The club maintains its distinctive image through its use of patches, colors, and symbols. The black and white color scheme, the Charlie logo, and mottos like "God forgives, outlaws don't" are fiercely protected. Members guard their colors with their lives, and club rules dictate that items bearing the club's logo must never touch the floor. Success built on betrayal rarely lasts long. For Garnet Mother McEwen, the triumph of orchestrating the Satan's Choice patch over to the Outlaws quickly crumbled as his web of lies unraveled around him. From prison, Bernie Gindon wasn't taking McEwen's betrayal lying down. He placed a $10,000 bounty on McEwen's head, deadly serious in the outlaw biker world where such contracts are fulfilled with brutal efficiency. Not long after, McEwen's house in St. Catharines became the target of an assassination attempt. Though he survived, the message was crystal clear. His days were numbered. Meanwhile, the grand merger he'd schemed for was falling apart. Many Satan's Choice members, disgusted at the betrayal of their Canadian identity, simply walked away. Rather than creating a stronger, unified club, McEwen's manipulation had weakened both organizations. The Toronto chapter flatly refused to join the Outlaws, forming alliances with other local clubs to block the Outlaws' expansion. Despite growing resistance, McEwen achieved his goal of becoming the first national president of the Canadian Outlaws. But leadership built on deception is like a house of cards. One gust of truth brings it all down. The American Outlaws, led by Taco Bowman, discovered McEwen had embezzled $30,000 from the club. For a man who had preached brotherhood and loyalty, this was the final straw. In most cases, stealing from an outlaw motorcycle club would result in a death sentence. McEwen was lucky. He was merely expelled from the organization he had worked so hard to join. His fall from grace was complete when he fled town, abandoning his motorcycle and leather for a dishwasher's apron at a Calgary hotel. But McEwen couldn't stay away from the biker lifestyle. In Calgary, he joined a smaller club called the Chosen Few MC, where his sticky fingers got him in trouble one final time when he was caught stealing from his new brothers. This time, there would be no mercy. His fellow bikers administered a brutal beating, using McEwen's own artificial leg as a weapon. A humiliating end for a man who once commanded respect and fear. From the humble origins at Matilda's Bar on Route 66 to international expansion across 43 countries, the Outlaws MC has survived internal conflicts, rivalries with other clubs, and law enforcement crackdowns. Through it all, they've maintained their core identity, summarized in their most famous motto, "Outlaws forever, forever outlaws." The legacy of men like Garnet Mother McEwen serves as both a warning and a foundation. His ambition helped expand the club internationally, but his betrayal strengthened their resolve against informants and infiltrators. In the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, where loyalty is everything and betrayal is punishable by death, McEwen's story continues to echo as a reminder of what happens when personal gain is placed above brotherhood. The Code of the Outlaw. Every organization has rules, but in the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, the code isn't just a set of guidelines. It's a way of life enforced with deadly seriousness. For clubs like the Outlaws MC, This code governs every aspect of members' lives, from the bikes they ride to how they handle conflict and even how they dress. At its core is absolute loyalty to the Brotherhood, the very principle Garnet Mother McEwen violated with devastating consequences. The Outlaws' code begins with their colors, the black and white leather or denim vests bearing the club's patches. These aren't just clothing, they're sacred symbols of membership. Club rules dictate that members must guard their colors with their lives, and any item bearing the club's logo must never touch the floor. The skull and crossed pistons logo, known affectionately as Charlie, is fiercely protected. When an outlaw puts on his colors, he's making a statement about who he is and what he stands for. The patches on an outlaw's vest tell a story. The top rocker bears the club's name, the center patch displays Charlie, and the bottom rocker shows the territory they claim to control. This territorial marker isn't just decoration, it's a declaration of power. As one former member explained, their territory is their business. Clubs often engage in violent conflicts over key cities and states, with blood spilled to maintain control of lucrative areas. Membership requirements reflect the exclusive nature of the Brotherhood. Applicants must be white men over the age of 21, who own an American-made motorcycle of at least 750 cubic centimeters, typically Harley-Davidson, Indian, or Victory. Prospective members undergo a rigorous process that begins as a hang-around, progresses to prospect, then probate, before finally becoming full-patched members, all requiring unanimous approval from the chapter. The number 13 on patches typically indicates involvement with illegal substances, while 1% refers to the American Motorcycle Association's supposed comment that 99% of motorcyclists are law-abiding citizens, while 1% are outlaws, a badge these clubs wear with pride. After what happened with McEwen, the vetting process became even stricter. Some clubs require prospects to commit crimes in front of full members to prove they're not law enforcement. The hierarchy within the club is strictly enforced. Each chapter is governed by an elected officer corps consisting of a president, vice president, treasurer, and sergeant-at-arms, enforcer. Weekly church meetings are mandatory, and members pay dues of $1,200 per year, plus additional fees to help brothers in legal trouble. Disobedience or rule violations can result in punishment ranging from fines to violent discipline. In the Outlaws, members who leave in bad standing must burn off or cover up their club-related tattoos, usually by heating a butter knife and applying it repeatedly to their skin. Women in the club world occupy a lower status than men. Typically referred to as old ladies, they may wear vests with patches reading "Property of the Outlaws," reflecting the club's often misogynistic culture. According to law enforcement, women affiliated with these clubs are sometimes forced into prostitution or street-level drug trafficking. The code extends to how outlaws deal with the outside world. Members adhere to a strict no-comment policy with non-club members, especially law enforcement. The club's rivalry with Hell's Angels has given rise to phrases like Adios, Angels die in outlaw states, and Ahamdi, all Hell's Angels must die, which members proudly display on patches. Perhaps most importantly, the code emphasizes unwavering loyalty to the Brotherhood above all else. This was the principle that Garnet McEwen violated most egregiously when he became an informant. In the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, where the motto is "God forgives, outlaws don't," GFOD, betrayal carries consequences that no amount of power or influence can prevent. After McEwen's betrayal was exposed, this code of loyalty became even more central to the outlaw's identity. His story is told to prospective members as a warning about what happens when personal ambition trumps brotherhood. As we'll see in the next section, the strict code of the Outlaws hasn't prevented the organization from evolving into a sophisticated criminal enterprise with legitimate business fronts, a far cry from its humble beginnings as a club for motorcycle enthusiasts. From rebels to businessmen, the evolution of the Outlaws MC. What began after World War II as a way for returning veterans to recapture the brotherhood and adrenaline they experienced in combat has evolved into a sophisticated organization that straddles both the criminal underworld and legitimate business enterprises. The outlaw motorcycle club culture has transformed dramatically since the days of McEwen's betrayal, developing from rowdy rebels into calculated criminals and surprisingly savvy businessmen. Contrary to popular belief, not all members of outlaw motorcycle clubs are involved in criminal activity. As one outlaw put it, not everybody that joins a motorcycle club is a criminal. They just have a certain philosophy of life, an outlaw outlook. I look at rules as suggestions. Most of them are pretty good. But if there's one I don't think pertains to me, then I don't believe I have to follow it. This philosophy, questioning authority and living by one's own code, remains at the heart of the culture, even as the clubs have become more organized. Today's Outlaws MC bears little resemblance to the small club founded by Electromotive Company employees at Matilda's Bar on Route 66 in 1935. Modern chapters operate like corporations, with clearly defined roles, strategic planning, and sophisticated financial operations. What was once a loose collection of rebellious bikers has transformed into a multinational organization, with branches in dozens of countries. This evolution began in earnest during the 1970s, when outlaw clubs realized the potential profits in organized crime. The drug trade, particularly methamphetamine production and distribution, became a lucrative source of income. Law enforcement agencies have documented the outlaws' involvement in drug trafficking, extortion, money laundering, prostitution rings, weapons trafficking, and violent acts directed at rival clubs. However, the club has consistently maintained that they are not an organized crime syndicate, but simply motorcycle enthusiasts who live a non-conventional lifestyle. As law enforcement pressure increased, the outlaws and similar clubs began establishing legitimate business fronts. Members often own tattoo parlors, security companies, motorcycle repair shops, and bars. These businesses serve multiple purposes. They provide legal income, opportunities for money laundering, and gathering places for club activities. The security industry proved particularly attractive, as it allowed members to leverage their intimidating reputations in a legal context. The club also developed a sophisticated support network. Support clubs range from local groups to regional clubs that help the outlaws maintain territorial control. The official and primary support club for the outlaws is the Black Pistons Motorcycle Club, which is active internationally. These support clubs carry out retail-level drug distribution and other activities to insulate the main club from criminal liability. It's a tiered system designed to protect the organization's leadership from direct involvement in illegal activities. The Outlaws' expansion strategy evolved as well. Rather than fighting to establish new chapters from scratch, they began patching over existing motorcycle clubs. This approach, which McEwen pioneered despite his eventual downfall, proved highly effective for rapid growth. When a club is patched over, its members literally remove their old club's patches and replace them with Outlaws insignia in a ceremonial burning of their former identity. Even the membership has changed. While early outlaws came primarily from working-class backgrounds with limited education, modern members include military veterans, former law enforcement, and businessmen with college degrees. This diversity of skills has allowed the club to evolve from simple strong-arm tactics to more sophisticated criminal enterprises. The relationship between outlaws chapters has also transformed. Originally, chapters operated with significant autonomy. Today, there's a more structured hierarchy, with regional presidents overseeing areas divided and named by color, such as the red and blue regions, who report to the international president. This corporate-style structure allows for better coordination across the organization's vast international network. Despite these changes, the club maintains its distinctive image through its use of patches, colors, and symbols. The black and white color scheme, the Charlie logo, and mottos like "God forgives, outlaws don't" remain fiercely protected. Members guard their colors with their lives, preserving traditions even as the organization evolves. As we'll explore next, this evolution from rebels to businessmen facilitated the Outlaws' expansion beyond American borders, transforming what was once a Chicago motorcycle club into a global criminal enterprise with chapters across 6 continents. McEwen's vision of international expansion, though tainted by his betrayal, became a reality that far exceeded even his ambitious dreams. The International Brotherhood. What began as a small Chicago club has expanded into a global organization that would likely astonish its original founders. By 2010, 7 American-based 1% clubs had a total of 484 chapters outside the United States, while Italian crime families, the Russian Mafia, and MS-13 are foreign imports to America. 1% Bikers are uniquely America's sole organized crime export. The Outlaws' expansion into Canada through McEwen's controversial patchover laid the groundwork for this international growth. Despite the betrayal and chaos that followed his leadership, McEwen's vision of a cross-border club proved prophetic. Today, the Outlaws have chapters in 43 countries spanning North America, Europe, Australia, and Asia, with over 4,000 members worldwide. This global expansion didn't happen by accident. It was a carefully orchestrated strategy that gained momentum in the 1990s. After establishing themselves in Canada in 1977, the Outlaws moved into Europe, opening chapters in France in 1993 and Norway in 1995. Australia followed in 1994. Each new country presented unique challenges, different laws, cultures, and existing criminal organizations. But the Outlaws adapted their model to fit local conditions while maintaining their core identity. The club achieved a significant milestone in November 2006, when they became the first major outlaw motorcycle club to open a chapter in the Far East, establishing a presence in Okinawa City, Japan. This push into Asia demonstrated the club's global ambitions and ability to operate in vastly different cultural environments. Each chapter operates semi-independently in its region, but maintains strong national and international relationships within the overall organization. Their structure is remarkably consistent worldwide. Chapters are governed by an elected officer corps consisting of a president, vice president, treasurer, and sergeant-at-arms. Regional presidents oversee areas divided and named by color, and these regional presidents report to the international president. In the United States alone, the Outlaws' territory is divided into 10 color-coded regions: Black, Indiana and Michigan; Blue, Pennsylvania; Copper, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, Virginia; Gold, Wisconsin; Gray, Tennessee; Green, Kentucky, Ohio, and Oklahoma; Orange, Florida; Red, New England and Philadelphia Metro; Silver, Alabama and Georgia; and White, Illinois. The club's international headquarters has moved over time, originally in Chicago, then Detroit during Harry Taco Bowman's presidency, 1984 to 1999, then Tampa under James Big Frank Wheeler, and later Milwaukee under Jack Rosger. This mobility reflects both strategic shifts and the need to adapt to law enforcement pressure. Communication between international chapters was once limited to in-person meetings at major runs, motorcycle gatherings, and carefully worded telephone calls. Today, encrypted messaging apps, secure video conferencing, and proprietary communication systems allow the club to coordinate activities globally while evading surveillance. Technology has transformed how the Brotherhood operates across borders. This international expansion has created both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, it provides access to new markets for illegal activities and safe havens when members need to escape law enforcement heat in their home countries. On the other hand, it exposes the club to additional scrutiny from international law enforcement agencies like Interpol and Europol. The Outlaws' international chapters aren't carbon copies of their American counterparts. European chapters often adapt to local customs and motorcycle preferences. Outside North America, the rule requiring American-made motorcycles has been relaxed, allowing members to ride motorcycles manufactured in any country, provided they're in the chopper style. This pragmatic approach has helped the club grow in regions where Harley-Davidsons are prohibitively expensive or difficult to maintain. Despite these adaptations, the core values and identity of the Outlaws remain consistent worldwide. The black and white colors, the Charlie logo, and the God forgives, Outlaws don't motto are universal symbols recognized by members from Chicago to Sydney to Oslo. This consistency in imagery and values helps maintain a sense of brotherhood across vast geographical distances. International expansion has also meant international conflict. The Outlaws' long-standing rivalry with the Hells Angels has played out on a global stage, with violent confrontations occurring in countries far from America's shores. In Belgium, Sweden, and Australia, members of both clubs have been involved in shootings, bombings, and murders as they compete for territory and criminal markets. This global presence, far beyond what the original McCook Outlaws could have imagined, speaks to the enduring appeal of outlaw motorcycle culture and its ability to adapt to different environments. As we'll see in the next section, this reality stands in stark contrast to the Hollywood myths that have shaped public perception of these organizations. Hollywood versus reality, myths and truths about outlaw motorcycle clubs. When Hollywood portrays outlaw motorcycle clubs, it often romanticizes the lifestyle, focusing on the freedom of the open road, the tight brotherhood, and the rebellion against society's constraints. Shows like Sons of Anarchy have shaped public perception of what it means to be an outlaw biker, creating a fictional world that sometimes bears little resemblance to reality. But as one former outlaw put it, Sons of Anarchy was one of the worst things that could ever happen to motorcycle clubs. Jack's the main guy. He's not a biker, he's a serial killer. The show's popularity led to a wave of new, inexperienced clubs forming with no understanding of club history or protocol. This phenomenon created headaches for established clubs like the Outlaws. "All I'd tell them is, look, you guys have no clue," said one former member. "You might as well just put on Bulls jackets and ride around. You might be okay here in Chicago, but if you decide to ride into Indiana or Wisconsin and you have this on, people that might not like you. You've got to live with the stereotype. If you walk into a bar with colors on, you better be willing to defend them." Hollywood typically portrays outlaw bikers as uniformly criminal, violent, and uneducated, modern-day pirates who live completely outside society's norms. The reality is more nuanced. While some members are involved in criminal activity, others maintain regular jobs, pay taxes, and limit their involvement to weekend rides and social events. Many are military veterans, former law enforcement officers, or skilled tradesmen who simply enjoy the brotherhood and freedom of the biker lifestyle. Movies and TV shows often depict outlaw clubs as disorganized bands of misfits, when in fact they operate with military-like precision and structure. Real outlaw clubs have constitutions, bylaws, and formal meeting procedures. Decisions are typically made by majority vote, not by the whim of a charismatic leader as often portrayed on screen. The Hollywood version of club leadership, a dictatorial president who rules with an iron fist, is far from the reality of how most clubs function. Another common misconception is that violence is constant and random. In reality, violence within the outlaw biker world is typically strategic and purposeful. Conflicts over territory, disrespect, or business are carefully calculated, not the result of drunken impulses as often shown in media. When violence does occur, it's usually targeted at specific individuals for specific reasons, not indiscriminate. The relationship between outlaw clubs and law enforcement is also frequently misrepresented. While there is certainly antagonism, the portrayal of constant shootouts with police is pure fiction. Most clubs prefer to avoid law enforcement attention and operate in the shadows. They employ sophisticated legal strategies, often retaining skilled attorneys who specialize in defending club members. Perhaps most misleading is how Hollywood portrays the role of women in outlaw biker culture. While the reality for women associated with these clubs is often troubling, with misogyny being common, it's not always as simple as the property patches suggest. Some women associated with outlaw clubs have significant influence behind the scenes, running businesses, managing finances, and even influencing club decisions. The media fascination with outlaw motorcycle clubs began in 1947 when members of various motorcycle clubs were involved in disturbances in Hollister, California. The events were sensationalized by Life magazine, creating the original myth of the wild, uncontrollable biker. This image was cemented by films like The Wild One, 1953, starring Marlon Brando, which established many of the stereotypes that persist today. Hunter S. Thompson's 1966 book, Hell's Angels: The Strange and Terrible Saga of the Outlaw Motorcycle Gangs, further embedded the outlaw biker in American popular culture, though Thompson's account was more nuanced than most that followed. Despite the criminal allegations, many Outlaws members see themselves differently. The club's website once featured a statement reading, "The government has labeled the Outlaws MC a criminal organization and all its members as criminals simply because they are members. This is one of the most untrue and unjust statements ever made concerning our club. From their perspective, they're simply motorcycle enthusiasts living a non-conventional lifestyle who are unfairly stereotyped by law enforcement and the media. The truth about outlaw motorcycle clubs exists somewhere between the romanticized Hollywood version and the pure criminal enterprise portrayed by law enforcement. They are complex organizations with their own culture, rules, and values that have evolved over decades. Understanding this reality requires looking beyond both the glamorized media portrayals and the sometimes overzealous law enforcement narratives. As we turn to our final section, we'll explore how the legacy of Garnet Mother McEwen, the one-legged snitch who betrayed his brothers for personal gain, continues to shape the Outlaws MC and outlaw biker culture more broadly, serving as a cautionary tale about the consequences of betrayal within a world where loyalty is everything. The legacy of the one-legged snitch.
I just saw a video that was a complete abomination, and it's the problem in MC culture right now. And I'm not co-signing anybody taking anybody's vest, anybody beating anybody. I'm not co-signing any of that. But what I'm talking about is telling people that if a 1%er comes up to you and tells you that you can't have a certain patch or a bottom rocker repping a state or a city, that you don't have to respect it, they are delusional. Every time you look on the news and something goes on, trust me when I tell you, it's because one club had that bottom rocker and they moved in, and the other club that been there for years was not having.
Garnet Mother McEwen's story remains a cautionary tale in outlaw biker circles, the ultimate example of betrayal's consequences. His rise from pencil salesman to biker boss, his double life as an informant, his brief reign as the first Canadian Outlaws president, and his humiliating fall when beaten with his own prosthetic leg, all serve as a stark reminder about the price of disloyalty in a world where brotherhood is supposed to be sacred. By January 2012, when McEwen passed away in obscurity in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, he had long since faded from the public eye. The man who once dreamed of leading the most powerful outlaw motorcycle organization in North America died as he had begun, an ordinary citizen far removed from the leather-clad brotherhood he had both served and betrayed. Few outside the biker world mourned his passing or even noticed he was gone. Yet within the culture of outlaw motorcycle clubs, McEwen's legacy lives on. His name is rarely spoken among Outlaws members, but his story is told to prospective members as a warning about what happens when personal ambition trumps loyalty to the brotherhood. In a strange way, McEwen's betrayal strengthened the Outlaws by showing exactly what kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated, making the organization more vigilant about potential infiltrators. While McEwen's personal journey ended in disgrace, his impact on the Outlaws MC was significant and lasting. His patchover of Satan's Choice chapters established the Outlaws as an international organization and laid the groundwork for their continued global expansion. Today's presence of the Outlaws in 43 countries across 6 continents can be traced back to McEwen's vision, even if his methods were ultimately self-serving and destructive. His betrayal also led to stricter vetting processes for new members and increased paranoia about infiltration by law enforcement or rival clubs. After the McEwen debacle, prospects often had to undergo extensive background checks and prove their loyalty through actions that would make it impossible for them to be police informants. This paranoia would shape how these organizations operated for decades to come, making them even harder for authorities to penetrate. McEwen's story also affected how motorcycle clubs interact with law enforcement. His double dealing as an informant made clubs even more secretive and resistant to cooperation with authorities. The no-comment policy became even more strictly enforced, and the consequences for cooperating with police became more severe. This has made investigating these organizations increasingly difficult for law enforcement agencies worldwide. The beating McEwen received with his own prosthetic leg became legendary in biker circles, a symbolic punishment for a man who had used his disability to gain sympathy while manipulating everyone around him. It served as a powerful reminder that in the outlaw biker world, no one is above the code, regardless of their rank or physical condition. The imagery of this humiliating punishment has been passed down through generations of club members as the ultimate example of justice served for betrayal. Perhaps most importantly, McEwen's betrayal reinforced the central importance of loyalty in outlaw biker culture. In a world where your brothers are supposed to be your family, where the motto is outlaws forever, forever outlaws, McEwen's actions were the ultimate sin. His story is a powerful reminder that betrayal carries consequences that no amount of power or influence can prevent. Today, as law enforcement agencies worldwide continue their efforts against outlaw motorcycle clubs, the Outlaws MC remains one of the most resilient and adaptable organizations of its kind, partly because of the hard lessons learned from the rise and fall of the Snitch, who would be king. The organization has survived internal conflicts, rivalries with other clubs, and law enforcement crackdowns, maintaining its core identity while evolving with the times. From the humble origins at Matilda's Bar on Route 66 to international expansion across 43 countries, from the early days of simple motorcycle enthusiasts to sophisticated criminal enterprises with legitimate business fronts, the history of the Outlaws MC contains many chapters, but few are as compelling or as cautionary as the story of Garnet Mother McEwen, the one-legged snitch who rose to become the Outlaws' most dangerous president, only to fall victim to his own ambition and betrayal. In the world of outlaw motorcycle clubs, where loyalty is everything and betrayal is punishable by death, McEwen's legacy serves as both a warning and a foundation, a reminder of what happens when personal gain is placed above brotherhood, and a stepping stone toward the international organization the Outlaws MC would eventually become.